Hey, how's it going, everybody? Today I wanted to do something new on the channel and make my first deck profile video from the recent webcam tournament that I played in. Going into this tournament as the first big event that I've competed in with UniVersus, I was extremely nervous, but it ended up being a fantastic experience. I had so much fun, and all of my opponents were a blast to play against. So I want to give a huge shout out to Let's Talk UVS and to Tam Cardwell, plus all the sponsors for this event and the events to come. Thank you so much for putting this together. My goal for this video is to break down the deck that I used, explain my choices for each card that I included in the deck, and then we'll go over how it performed throughout my matches. At the end, I also want to talk about what could be done differently for the future of this deck. And before I get started, if you're enjoying this content, feel free to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below about what you think about the deck. Alrighty, let's get right into it. So the deck that I was running for this tournament was a Mount Lady 2 deck on the Earth symbol. Mount Lady 2 is a 6-hander with 30 health, and the whole point of Mount Lady is to get as many size counters as possible by reviewing your cards. Each card reviewed equals a size counter. When you have 3 counters, you can give your attack plus 3 damage. When you have 5 counters, you can give your attack plus 3 damage and commit a rival face-up foundation. And then when you have 10 counters, you can remove them and your attack becomes unblockable. Now I started playing UniVersus right before Jetburn came out, and that's the set that introduced Mount Lady 2, and I've basically been enjoying playing her ever since release. I've gone through multiple different variations of her deck, like the all high attack on Earth, different chaos decks, but the deck that I built for this tournament was probably the most fun I've ever had with her. And that was really the major goal that I wanted to get out of this tournament, was playing a deck that I really enjoy, a character that I really enjoy, and just getting as much experience as I could. The core idea I landed on for this deck was to make it so high difficulty attacks were very easy to play, and not only that, but the attacks made each other attack easier to play. And on that note, we'll start off with the first cards in my deck, City Rampage. I played 4 copies of City Rampage, and this action basically made the deck really work. It gives all my attacks in my card pool +1 speed and +1 damage, and as its form, it gives all of my checks to play attacks with difficulty 5 or greater +2 for the rest of this turn. Luckily, even when I didn't have this card, it was still fairly easy to string 3 or 4 high difficulty attacks, which was awesome. And having this in my hand, and sometimes 2 in my hand, felt really good. Those were the only actions played in my deck, but I did have one asset, Twisty Surroundings. I can commit it to give my rival -2 to their check, and then either player can discard 1 momentum to change the zone of the attack. Which I don't believe ever happened in any of my matches, but this came in handy as a block with the Breaker 2, and I was able to ruin some checks again a couple of the matches. We're now on to my attacks. So first up, we have 2 copies of Electric Moth. These are the only 4 diff attacks that I included in my deck, but Electric Moth is a 3 high for 4. It allows me to discard 1 card and draw 2, or potentially 3 if there's 10 or more foundations on my rival stage. And since Mount Lady is technically a giant, I can ready my character after this attack resolves. So this card was very good in case I only had 1 or 2 attacks in hand. I was able to cycle it up and see if I can draw any more or draw a City Rampage. For my 5 difficulty attacks, we start off with 2 copies of Gigantification Swing. This attack allowed me to give +1 to my checks for Charge, Fury, and Slam attacks if I spend a momentum. And then after I play this, your rival's next check to play a card gets -2. So not only was it good for offensive strings, but I could also play it and basically give my opponent Breaker 2. Next up, of course, is 4 copies of Black Abyss. Black Abyss is one of the best cards in the game right now. I can give my attack +1 to its check if it deals damage, and then once it goes into my momentum, I give my attacks +X for the number of Black Abysses in my momentum, so that's potentially +4/+4 4 times, and that's crazy. Next up, we have 2 copies of Hunter's Pursuit. This card allows me to give my next attack -2 difficulty if I have 3 or more face down foundations. It's another low attack, and it has the X2 on it. And then after that, we have 2 copies of Smashing Stomp, another low attack. Enhance my next check to play an attack gets +1, and after this attack deals damage, I can draw 1 card. So as you can see, even in just my 5 difficulty attacks, that 1, 2, 3, 4 of them all help other attacks be played. And last but not least, in my 5 diffs is Canyon. 4 copies of it. I can enhance Mail 2. My attack gets +1 damage for each different symbol among cards, so I'm getting usually +4 or +6 to my attack, and those cards count as milled, so I'm giving 2 counters to Mount Lady. This is definitely a staple Mount Lady card and is a must 3 or 4 copy if you're running her. For our 6 difficulty attacks, we're starting off with Titan Cliff. Titan Cliff is another staple Mount Lady card. It allows you to discard up to 3 cards and draw 1 card for each card discarded. You can then count those for being reviewed, which gives Mount Lady up to 3 counters. And then you can build 1 card with a check value of 6 from your hand or your discard pile. And as you'll see when we talk about my foundations, this helped a lot during my matches. Plus it has the Mount Lady Powerful 3, so you can dump some momentum to bump this card up. And then lastly, I'm only running 1 copy of Heat Ray. It has Deadlock Stun 3, 7 low for 6. This attack gets +1 damage for every 2 cards in your discard pile with a difficulty 5 or greater, which for this deck can be a lot. And then after it deals damage, I can flip 2 Rival Foundations, which came in clutch. I think my biggest regret is not running more copies of this card. It's a 1 high block, so I definitely think having at least 2 or 3 of these in deck would have been extremely powerful. Now moving on to foundations, we're starting off with 6 copies of number 10 Pro Hero. I tried to include as many 6 checks as I could into this deck because of the high difficulty attacks that I'm playing, and number 10 Pro Hero explains itself. It's got a 1 high block and the 6 check. And then we have 2 copies of Quick to Act. I can give my attacks +1 speed if I'm under half health and it's a low block. And then we have 2 copies of Saving Bakugo. I can flip it after one of my foundations and flip due to rival effect. I unflip that and draw a card. For my 1 difficulty foundations, we have our draw foundations. So 4 copies of Fearsome Transformation and 4 copies of Chivalrous Competitor. Fearsome Transformation, you flip, draw 1 card. If you have momentum, you have to discard 1 card. And then Chivalrous Competitor, you flip, both players draw 1 card. And this also helps prevent other cards from being flipped or destroyed, which was nice. We then have Monster Aggression, Screonk, the classic. You enhance Destroy 1 Foundation, and then your attack gets +1 speed and +1 damage if they're 5 difficulty or greater. This card also helped me prevent Deadlock from happening, which was nice. Then there are 2 copies of Male Bonding, which flip after you take damage for an unblocked attack. You build the top card of your deck face down. This came in handy if I was running low on foundation in my stage and I couldn't build or I was drawing poorly. And lastly, we have 1 copy of the Shobijin's Message. After you play a block, you give a breaker 2 and you flip this card. This was nice to have, even just as 1 copy of. It's just a free breaker 2 on a block. Starting off with my 2 difficulty foundations, we have 4 copies of number 23 Pro Hero. This card allows me to give my attacks +1 speed if I have 3 or more counters, which was most of the time. And before my review step, it allows me to draw 1 card if I have less cards in my hand size. So it gives you more options to choose what card to review before you do it. This card also came in clutch, especially when I had 3 or 4 in my stage, and I could easily just build them in with Titan Cliff. After that, we have 4 copies of Moth Monster, another 6 check. You enhance commit, give an attack -2 speed, or if you've taken damage already, you give it -3 speed instead. After that is just 1 copy of Vast Strength. You respond, remove the card, and then after attack is played, you remove all non-keyword abilities from that attack. We then have 2 copies of Faith's Shield. When you block with this, which is majorly what this card was used for in my deck, you block all the damage, even if it's just a partial block, and then you flip the attack to prevent things like Echo. There's then 2 copies of Incredible Display. This card allowed me to prevent non-character responses such as Echo and other things like the response on Dragon Strike. And then I could commit this card to pick up a foundation if I block with it. And lastly, for my 2 diffs, we have Weapon Clash. This allowed me to get rid of some damage on attacks and also prevent Deadlock. But the major purpose for this card was the bottom enhanced, where I can flip and build the top card of my deck face down committed. It just allowed me to get more foundations in stage if I'm drawing too many attacks. Then I had a couple 3 and 4 diff foundations. We had 2 copies of History's Greatest Monster. This card also came in clutch for this deck just because of its response. You can once per turn, after you play a card with a printed difficulty of 5 or greater, you can ready it. So if you check a 4, you can commit for 5 and then ready it, so like nothing happened. And I never got to use its Deadlock Enhance, but I really wanted to. But you can commit this card and just give an attack throw, which would have been great. And then lastly, we have 4 copies of Ultra Regen. This card allowed you to gain 2 health and draw 2 cards if you take 5 or more damage, or if you have no ready foundations, you can add 1 card from your discard pile to your hand, which I don't think I ever used. The primary purpose of 4 of these was to have more 6 checks, and in total I think we had 16 6 checks on my deck, which was very nice. Overall, I think I did way better than I expected in this tournament. I went 2-2-1, so I had 2 wins, 2 losses, and a draw, and I even went up against some of the heavy hitters and more competitive decks like Amajiki and Endeavor. This deck definitely succeeded in the ways that I wanted it to, especially when it came to playing 5 or 6 difficulty attacks in a turn, and in doing incredible damage on turn 2 or turn 3, especially when I could stack up enough counters on Mount Lady as quickly as possible. And then it definitely fell flat in the areas that I expected it to, which was mostly defensively. In my side deck, I had 4 copies of Defending Pageant Queen, which I think I would definitely at least include 2 in my main deck for future play, maybe removing the Weapon Clash and replacing these 2. And then I think I would definitely move at least 1 or 2 copies of the Referee Jury from my side deck to my main deck. This definitely could have helped in a lot of different situations where I could change an attack's damage to 4, and then if it did damage, I could draw an extra card for a future block on that turn. The rest of the cards on my sideboard I didn't really add in. These were really the main 6 that I probably would include in my main deck from now on. But like I said, I had a lot of fun playing in the tournament, and I was glad I was able to make my first competitive deck work. If you want to watch any of the matches from the tournament, 2 at the time of recording this video are already up, and then the other 3 will be up in the next couple of days. As always, thanks for watching. I really enjoyed making this video, and hopefully I can do more deck profiles in the future. If you have any ideas for what you'd like me to do, leave them in the comments below, and I'll catch you in the next video. Have a good one.